Hello, my name is Chris Packham. I'm a naturalist and a broadcaster, and also I've been very flattered to have been invited to be a visiting lecturer at Lincoln University for the past few years, and I've been working with the Natural Sciences Department and the Media Department as much as I can to try and help and inspire the students there. But there is one group of students that I've wanted to reach out to perhaps more than any other because I share something with them. In my 40s, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. And this goes a long way to explain my own experiences at university, albeit a long time ago in the 1980s, when Asperger's and other autistic conditions weren't widely known amongst the public or the academic staff. So my time at university was quite difficult. In fact, in some ways, that's an understatement. So ever since then, I suppose I've harboured a hope that at some stage I might be able to offer some small assistance to people who are attending university now with similar or the same conditions, and hope that they would be able to make their experience there a little more comfortable and perhaps even more profitable. Let's be clear, I went to learn. I had some brilliant lecturers, some great lectures, and I came away with a good degree. The learning wasn't the difficulty. For me at that time, the difficulty was the social side of university. And let's face it, the social side of university is a very important part of it. So I suppose that was the root cause of all of my problems. So I'll just briefly encapsulate what life was like for me in the late 70s and early 80s. I would go to university, at least for the first year, most of the second, saying 20 pence please twice a day to the bus conductor and not speaking to any of my fellow students. I had already realised by then that I was a little bit different from everyone else, and I struggled with that, and I didn't understand it, of course. But my solution was simply not to engage, which was a shame looking back on it, because there was a lot of university life that I wasn't able to properly fulfill, not just the parties and all of that side of things, but cooperatively working, on projects within the sort of course units that I was doing. I did zoology. And it wasn't a total disaster, but it wasn't what it could have been. And what I would like is if students that went to Lincoln University now could have what it should be, all of it, 100%. Not any of it taken away just because, like me, they're a bit cognitively different. Because we're different, but we're not disabled. In fact, in many ways, we are enabled. We have the capacity to do things that perhaps neurotypical, as we call them, people can't do. But at the same time, we're hampered by certainly a few social incapacities. Anyway, that's why I'm making this little film. And I've also got some questions here, so I'm going to interview myself for a change. How did you feel before and in the early stages of starting university? Before, if I'm honest with you, I was probably terrified. That's probably the right word. I'd struggled through sixth form college. It was a difficult environment. I was a punk rocker. No one loved my blue hair and my zippy trousers, my stupid shoes or anything. But then going to university was really hard. One or two people who I at least knew the look of had come from my school to sixth form college. But when I turned up at university, it was just me and thousands of other people that I didn't know. I felt really small, very, very isolated. And, I knew that I couldn't communicate with them at that time. So it was pretty tough. Once or twice, I have to say, they tried to communicate with me, but I was socially inept. It wasn't their fault. Let's be very clear about this. Very, very clear. It was my fault. I just didn't know how to respond. It's a tough time of life. Hormonal catastrophe. Trying to grow up, trying to understand the world, ourselves, politics, everything. Really tough. So yeah, I was terrified. And when I got there, what was it like? Well, a manifestation of terror, because here I was in a new environment that I didn't know, loads of new buildings, loads of new schedules, loads of new people that I didn't know, expectations that I didn't know whether I'd be able to fulfill. I was absolutely full, to be honest with you. That's the simple answer. And my escape was just to dig in and get on with the work, to absolutely obsess and focus on simply all of the tasks that were set academically. Every essay, every unit, every course, every exam. Just focus on that and try and blank out everything else. Blanking out everything else about university. You can see what I mean about it being a waste. Lincoln University today is in a vibrant scene of extraordinary opportunities. You know, you might be into zoology, but there's arts, there's music, socially there's bands playing, there's all sorts of things to do there. I didn't do any of that because I couldn't. And I would very much hope that more people with Asperger's or whatever could. Question 2. Did you find that the reality of being at university met your expectations? And if not, were there any particularly unforeseen challenges you were faced with? I think I've already spoken about some of those. The challenges were being in a place with a large number of people the same age as me that I recognised that I was different from, and I felt I couldn't relate to, and I equally felt, maybe unfairly, that they couldn't relate to me either. It was a physically new environment. I didn't know where anything was. It was quite a difficult environment to go into because it was very structured. I had to come up with new timetables, new patterns of behaviour. I had to go to a new place. All of the things that people like myself struggle with. So, yeah, I think that was all round quite difficult. Let's move on to question 3. Did you find adapting to a new environment and being surrounded by unfamiliar people when at university was something that you were able to adapt to? Well, I was determined. I'd gone to university because I wanted the best education I could get. I wanted to be a good zoologist. I wanted to supplement all of my interest in natural history with the science that I needed as a foundation for that, to explain it all, to give it some directions, some construction, so that I could unravel all of the complexity of the things which had obsessed me since I'd been 3 or 4 years old, scrambling around the garden. That's why I was there, and I was determined that I'd get that. So I dug in and I put up with all of the other stuff simply because I knew that I was getting that takeaway. I was getting that ability to learn. But outside of that, I didn't achieve very much at university. So I got some good grades for all of my essays, shrews, stinging nettles, badgers. But I got some very poor grades when it came to learning how to exist with other human beings. I kind of hid from it. I kind of sort of put it off and thought I'd never need to master it. And that was a mistake, because as soon as I left university, I was in the real world. And in the real world, there were loads of people. And in order to progress, you have to work with them. And in order to do that, they have to accept you and you have to understand them. And that was a challenge, as it turned out, that was even greater than scoring enough points to get a zoology degree. Question 4. For a lot of students studying here at the University of Lincoln, working with fellow students on projects, group work, is mandatory and often a graded part of their academic studies. Did you ever have to work in groups during the course of your studies? And if so, how did you find this? I did have to work in groups and I found it very difficult because the people that I was working with struggled to understand me. They didn't get my straight talking. They didn't get my sense of humour, and I didn't get theirs either. So that day-to-day, instantaneous ability to communicate with other people was compromised. And retrospectively, it would have really helped if I'd had a bit of assistance there, to be honest with you. People pointing out, what I needed to do and what I needed to, or what was fair to accept from other people. And the world's a different place now. I'm talking about 1979, 1980, that sort of time. Now everyone knows about autism and knows about Asperger's. And hopefully your fellow students will understand that too, and they will be more accepting of you. None of the people that I was at university were cruel to me, not outrageously. They just didn't get why I was different. And I obviously understand that completely. But things are different now. I think we have the right now to ask other people to say, hold on a moment, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just a bit different than you. So if you could just do this one little thing, this other little thing, our lives together could be so much better. It's not a big ask most of the time. I don't like being touched physically. I don't like strangers touching me. It freaks me out. It's like that. I'm sat in my hotel room at the moment whilst my colleagues are all out having a meal together in a restaurant. I can do it. Of course I can. It's part and parcel of my world. But hand on heart, and as much as I like them all, and I'm privileged to share their company, and certainly privileged to work with them because they're great people in their field, I am more comfortable here, sat in my room, having had room service, than in a crowded, busy, noisy restaurant with lots of people jostling around, in a restaurant that I've never been before, that I don't know, having to talk to people who I don't really know. That's hard. So I had a relaxing evening. Were there any specific ways and strategies that you used to manage or overcome some of the potential difficulties that you were faced with when studying at university? I'd like to say yes, but I didn't actually achieve that until I'd left university. At university, I just blanked it. I just thought, I don't understand you, you don't understand me. My vocation is to learn here and get out with a good degree. That's what I'm going to do. When I left university, that's when I addressed these issues. It was then that actually it sunk in, and I sort of thought, this isn't going to work. You've got to learn how to communicate. You've got to learn how to look people in the eye. I couldn't even do that, You've got to learn how to not interrupt them, not go off on one, as I call it. Suddenly start talking for 5 minutes at very high speed about something in intrinsically very deep detail, far beyond that than they're really going to want to understand or listen to. Button it. Was a lot of things I learned. But I didn't start learning them until after university. Wouldn't it be great if you could use them, if you could learn them during the course of your time there, so that when you get into the working world, you're already in the flow? I wasn't in the flow when I got into the working world. It could have held me back quite significantly. And in today's working world, which is much more competitive, you don't want to be held back. So time at university, addressing these issues would be very well spent.